Hey, you guys out there, I know you've been watching some of these story teasers for the Win the Wellness War book. And if you haven't, I will show you on the screen where it is, and you can go find all the previous ones. They have been awesome. So they're reading about 300-ish words of their story, teasing you. The book's going to come out in about 30 days. Faith and I are going to talk about her story. She's going to share parts of her story. And then part of the process, because she's been very much about the process of this book. So we're going to chat about that. These teasers are always less than 15 minutes, so you do not have to deal with me that long. Isn't that good? Good times. Hi, Faith.
Hi.
Faith is from across the water. She is hailing to us from the UK. She loves her cats, and every time we get on a video, one of them shows up. So here we go. Yay, yay. Well, we were just, the story teaser prior to you, I had met with Tanner, and as you know, that's my youngest son. And so that was really interesting to watch that and to keep my act together. I'm emotionally resilient now is what I'm saying. So with you, I want to just introduce you real quickly. So we've known each other for a few years. Faith and I first met. I think she was following some of my running my mouth a little bit before we actually connected. She was a cast member on my Coach Peggy Real-Time show, season 2. And so that's on my media site as well, my YouTube channel. And so after she was a cast member, then we started working together as you were a client. And then it didn't take long because of our connection. We became fast friends, very, very good friends. And she just left here after visiting me. Do you miss me?
I do, yes.
Answer should always be yes. Well, yes. Well, hello. All right. So your story was, it's very interesting, you guys. When we read the stories and we get them in and we start editing them, regardless of how well I think I know any of the authors, even my son, Markus, whatever, there's always something you learn. Always. And there's always an event in their life you didn't realize, or you watch them grow through it. It's such an honor. So tell us the name of your story, and then if you could tease us into a little bit of it.
The story is called Don't Rock the Boat. And this has been sort of one of the hardest stories I've ever written. It's taken sort of over a year to get it down and written because I've fought with myself throughout the whole process. But I've got to the point where it's my story and mine alone to tell. Just to sort of give you just a section from the story. When I was 4, my mum disappeared. Where was my mum? I remember my dad and me driving to a large building with many corridors. After waiting for what felt like forever, we entered a large, dark room. Beds were lined up on both sides of the room, and sunlight came through the frosted windows at the far end of the hall. I saw my mum sitting on a bed at the far end of the room and was so excited and happy to see her. As my dad approached her, he told me to wait, and as soon as she saw me, she burst into tears. In my mind, I didn't understand what I had done wrong. Why was she upset with me? I stood silently, scared to do something wrong and upset her again. I felt so small and helpless. Would she leave again? I didn't know she'd had a breakdown, was hospitalized. It was too complicated to understand as a little girl. After the breakdown, I felt the distance between us, but was not sure if it was her or if it was me, but something had changed. My dad continued to be a peacekeeper, and when faced with conflict, he would use humour and laughter and detach and say, "Don't upset your mother." He was a great teacher of how to avoid conflict and not rock the boat. I wanted to be good and not upset anyone and make them leave. But the voice inside constantly screamed, "Don't rock the boat."
Good job. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it did take you a long time to write that. And I think as a message that I can share is that when you start writing, it's such a process. Even if you're a really good writer and you've written books and you've done it before, there's a difference between writing about Twilight or whatever versus really digging deep in the stuff that it digs up, especially if some of the people are still alive. Right. And so when you went through this, did more stir up than you thought would?
Yeah, and I think they stirred a lot of resistance, but it also stirred up anger that I wasn't expecting, um, about sort of things that you bury, that you forget about, and that obviously your mind sort of wants to protect you from those um, things. So you sort of when you've told yourself for so long not to not rock the boat, to
Mhm.
actually then start telling your story and sharing it with other people, it goes against everything that you've always told yourself not to do. So that
Yeah,
was what.
yeah, and which is interesting because the irony in that is you're doing exactly what you're writing about, it, meaning that you wanted to tell the story, but am I rocking the boat? I want to share my emotions, but am I rocking the boat? And here you are, decades later, coping with those emotions and making sure you don't do that anymore. Yeah. I know you've worked with me on these books. And it's interesting, you guys, because I have a couple of moles that kind of follow me around, and Faith has become a mole very early on. Let me tell you what that means. Whether I'm posting something personal, a blog, somebody else's blog, a book, a story, whatever it is, she watches that on social media. And we have that type of relationship where she'll come at me and say, third second sentence, second paragraph, did you mean this or whatever? So it made sense when Marcus and I went along and started this book to pull Faith in to follow me, in the sense that she knows the content, she knows how I write. And then she started to know the process of bringing in 40 stories and starting to edit and help us go through this process, because it's a lot. So what do you think a couple of the big learning things that by being a part of the process of a compilation book, what kind of rings home to you when you think about that?
I mean, it's been an incredible journey, just finding out that there's so many different stories from different backgrounds, and it's sort of really opened up my eyes, I think, to different perspectives, but also I find a way to say this now.
No, don't worry. I know
um,
you've been sick, so thank you for coming, but yeah.
um, no, it's really, I think it's really helped me because I've it's stirred up a lot of emotions in me through the process, because there are so many great writers out there, um, and I think I've connected with their stories, and I know sort of a lot well too. So that's sort of been one of the big things that it's helped me with, through their joy, through their pain. It's made me realise how much more we are connected.
Mhm.
That's probably to explain it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that has been the biggest incline in, my observation of this process, because the main thing that Marcus and I started with is that he watched his patients and I watched my clients, and we're like, oh my God, these testimonies could touch so many lives and change lives. And for 20, years, I thought about doing that. And then he and I for 14. And however, but on the other side of it, when you start to collect those, that's really about a year and a half ago, we realized, whoa, I don't think people really, because he learned a lot because he's introverted and he hadn't been a writer per se. Um, but then you really start to see all this stuff, and you guys or others as readers don't realize when we're holding, I've done, I don't know how many books in the last year helping other writers. I've probably done 200 stories from different writers, but I'm sitting here with this library of stuff going, whoa, we've got mental health, we've got spiritual stuff, we've got weight loss, we've got eating disorders, we've got hoarders. And I was able to really quickly understand how much we can connect by someone going, I'm not the only one. Oh my God, they made it through it. It wasn't that kind of amazing to you when you start to look at more than
It's
one story?
really inspiring, because I think you never really know somebody's true story, and you never really know what somebody's been through, because a lot of time you're just seeing them now, and when you actually see what they've been through and the journey, it's really inspiring as well to what you can achieve, what you can do,
Yeah,
um, and just what.
really good point. That's a really
uh,
good point. I most of the time you're on that tail end of it where I've worked through the authors going back and forth, and we've sprinkled it a little bit and pulled some things out. And then you and Marcus come in on the other side, and then we go to another editors and formatters and all of that stuff. But it is amazing to have all these eyes on it and to feel really proud. And hopefully the authors do. They approve the final story, obviously, and they always own their story. For you guys who want to be a part of the third book that's going to come out next year, it's called Wellness GPS, and G is Get Prepared for Success. But just remember, you always own it. If you're writing a book or you want to repurpose a story that you've written before, it's another place to connect that, even for marketing purposes, but it's a place to connect that and get easier and help, whether you want to do a support group or, I've said all that stuff, or a book club or whatever it is, but we get better at each book always as well. So, we get better in our messaging to say, we got you and you can do this. And yeah, so are you, one other question I want to ask you is that a lot of the writers, there's two things that they say. I don't have anything to write about. I was talking to Tanner about that in the last story teaser, where it's like, I don't have anything anybody care about, and I had said to him, then that in and of itself can be a message, just that, look how I've coped with this and found the good in things. That can help a lot too. But the second thing that I always hear is that, well, either I'm not a good writer, right? Or they'll say, the person I'd like to write about is still alive. And so I have a lot of conversations with, like, but it's your story, and you could also go talk to them, or if they've hurt you and you don't ever talk to them, it's still your perspective, your story. Did you choose to chat with the people or some of the people that you have in your story, or are you waiting for it to come out?
I didn't know, no, because I feel, from my perspective, it is more about me taking ownership of my story, my narrative, rather than always thinking about everyone else. I mean, I've always
Not
been very
rocking the
much,
boat, like,
I've always been like a people pleaser and worrying about everyone else, and always put other people's needs before my own.
right.
And I think, even though other people it may stir things within them, it's still, this is my story to write, and I've taken ownership of that.
I love that. We really recognize that in my sisters and my story, doing, the big sister, little sister kind of perspective. And it helped us grow immensely to be able to go back in our timeline of life and to be able to say, well, oh yeah, well, when I was 10 and you were, 3, this is what I recall. Well, that's not what I recall. And so hopefully there'll be some opportunities out there, you guys, that you'll be willing to share a story. And I know many people have wanted to write a book or wanted to write an article or maybe even start blogging. Reach out to me always and we can chat through it. You can find me at Peggy at allthingswellness.com. And Faith, thank you so much, obviously, for everything that you do for me personally, but also allowing us to go along on that journey as you went through sharing this story. Faith is also in the first book, The Fourfold Formula. You can grab that on Amazon, and we're going to let you go. So we'll see everybody next time, Faith. Thank you. Bye, guys.